Greetings, Action Research ECG 691 students. We are now into the end of the first month of class for 691, and at this point in the class, several things usually happen. Students are often a bit overwhelmed and having a little bit of difficulty wrapping their arms around the requirements of this course. And so the purpose of this video is to alleviate your fears and concerns and to give more specific direction on the process and progress of the course. Basically, let me say that after teaching ECG 691, 692 or its equivalent for years and years, that all of the action research classes at Jacksonville State University at the EDS level use the same 11-step approach. 5 chapters. The first chapter you introduce your problem or the improvements you want to make in your school, gather a group of stakeholders under advisory council and decide how you're going to operate. In chapter 2, you do a literature review, much like you did in research at the master's level, a literature review to examine how others have addressed this issue or this problem in the past. And then the third chapter is your plan of action. What specific strategies do you hope to employ to address the problem or make the improvement at your school or your institution or your setting? And that's 691. In 692, then you have the implementation stage where you implement the research and then for a period of weeks or maybe a couple of months at the most and gather data and then report that in chapter 4. Which is the outcome or the data. And then in chapter 5 you discuss where you are in the process, if it's not a completed process, and what the implications of your findings are. Perhaps your implementation intervention worked, perhaps it did not, but you want to discuss that and talk about further applications of the research. Those are the 5 chapters. It is a labor-intensive project and process, but it's very practical and very applicable to your setting where you work. In addition, some students are a little bit concerned about submitting for publication. There are 2 reasons we ask for you to do that after you've done your capstone presentation at the end of 692. We want you, and this is something you can actually do in 15 minutes. It's not an arduous process. We want you to find a suitable journal or publication and submit your work to them to see if they would entertain the possibility of publishing your paper, your research. We do this for 2 reasons primarily. One, an EDS is the next level before a doctorate. In your doctoral work, you will be doing similar kinds of things. Secondly, some of you will want to go on and teach at the university level. At the university level, you will have these kind of experiences where you seek publications. We've had many students who thanked us for that little brief exercise that gave them a sort of precursor about what that process is like. If it's worth writing, it's worth telling others about. So that's basically the philosophy behind that. I will say 2 or 3 things. Number 1, this is a process, and there's flexibility in the process, but the process is essentially the same for everyone involved in action research. Number 2, taking it all together, it is quite a daunting task, but broken down into bits and pieces, the process becomes manageable for anyone. And after having taught literally hundreds of students in this process since 2003, I can say that it is doable for anyone. Secondly, let me say that educational specialists are a very important group of people. What that very title implies, educational specialist, is that you are an expert at solving problems. You're an expert in making improvements. You're an expert in collaborating and building a consensus group. You're an expert in evaluating strategies as to their effectiveness and applicability in your place. You're an expert in solving problems. And so this is the capstone experience for your EDS educational specialist work. And as such, because of the time it takes to implement this process, it is given to 2 semesters, so that neither semester is more overwhelming than it needs to be. And you certainly can accomplish all of these things in these 2 semesters. So I want to encourage you, don't drop the class. Just continue to plug away at it. And this semester, this first semester in 691, you're going to be identifying your problem in your setting, discussing that with your supervisors, building a stakeholder group, and secondly, you're going to be diving into a literature review to find possible strategies that you might use that have been effective in other places to solve the same or similar problems. And thirdly, you're going to then write a plan of action, what you hope to do in the months to come and in the fall or the spring, whatever the case may be, to implement your solution and solve the problem. Then in the next semester, you'll have 2 large tasks, and that is to provide the implementation and then write about the results. So don't be overwhelmed. Take it a bite at a time, and be sure to communicate with myself, the professor, your teacher. This is across the board, any of the 5 or 6 people who are teaching action research. And because each project, unless you're working together as a group, each project is specific and individualized. And so much of the communication back and forth between the teacher and you will be individual communication. So hang in, keep on, plug away at it, and you'll find yourself at the successful end of this journey, just as many others before you have.